Okay, sweet. So this week we will be covering arrays. Last week we looked at functions and about local scope, global scope, right? So this week we'll start with arrays. So to begin, please give me your student ID for your attendances in the chat. So let's begin. Arrays. What are arrays? Arrays are data structures. They are used to store a group of objects or variables, right? All elements of an array must be of the same type. What does that mean? That means that you cannot have an array or array declared array of, for example, size 5 and have one element, say array at index 0 you have a string, let's say string apple, right? You stored apple, and then in the same array you at index 1 you have stored 5, right? You cannot have that. If you declare an array, it has to be of a specific type. For example, of type string, or let's say of type char, or type int, or type double, etc. And every element, it means all the 5 elements in that array needs to be double, right? The elements are stored sequentially in memory. What does that mean? That means that, thanks for your ID. I hope you all could hear me clearly, and if you have any questions, please do let me know. So, what does sequentially mean? The elements are stored sequentially. What do you think it means? It means that, means that, let's say this is an array of 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not really good at drawing this, but let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Array of size 5. So in the memory, wherever this array is stored, the whole 5 will be in a line. That is how indexing becomes easy. It means this is at index 0, this is index 1, index 2, 3, and 4. So if there is your RAM, there's a RAM here, and then you cannot have your index 1 over here and index 2 over here. Can't have that. It has to be side by side, sequentially, right? So let's move on. This allows for easy access, and it also allows for easy mistakes. Interesting, right? Let's move on and look at the array syntax. How does this look like? So defining array. Just like we've said, int number 10. This is an array of 10 integers. Const int size 10, and then int number size. It's better to have a constant written here instead of just a number, but you can have a number. It would mean the same, but it is a good idea to use name constants for the size, right? But here, what's the problem? We have int size is equal to 10, int number is size. So, what is the problem here compared to this one? What do you think? The problem here is size is not defined as a constant, but an array, for now, you guys know that array cannot grow or shrink. Once you define the size, it will be fixed, right? whether you use all of them, all of the blocks, or you don't use all of the blocks. The array will take 10 spaces in your RAM, right? So it needs to be constant. So what does this say? It says cautious. In standard C++, the size must be constant. This array definition will not work with all compilers, right? And then what is this? Array of integers named squares of size 5. What is happening here? Any idea? What do you think is happening here? Over here, the array called squares of size 5 is being initialized to index 0 being 0, index 1 has the value 1, index 2 has the value 4, index 3 has the value 9, and index 4 has the value 16, right? And what's happening here? Why isn't size there? Should it work? Should this work, or will it be compiled error? What is happening here? In int squares, there is a square bracket, but it has nothing inside it. There's nothing inside it. You all can hear me, right? So what happens here? It's kind of the same thing. The initialization is here, but the size is being omitted. So it says you can omit the array size if you supply initial values. The size is set to the number of initial values. So by default, this will automatically become 5 because you have put 5 initialize this array with 5 numbers, let's say. And here what are we doing? We're saying int squares 5 is equal to 0, 1, and 4. So we're initializing the first index, which is index 0, to 0, index 1 to value 1, and index 4 and index 2 has value 4. What happens to the other two indexes, index 3 and 4? If you supply fewer initial values than the size, the remaining value are set to 0. That is, if this is an int, right? This array contains 0, 1, 4, 0, 0. Okay. Let me know if you still have any questions. And this is array of string called name, which is of size 3. So array of string with size 3. So we have just introduced array syntaxes and what else? How to initialize, how to give the size, right? Let's move on. This is again a recap of how to define an array. So array has element type, right? So each element here in this example needs to be of type double. So you need to tell the data types which will contain in the array. This is called the name of the array, and this is the size of the array specified here. So use brackets to access an element. Use square brackets, okay? So if you want to access any value from here, you want to assign a value, you use the name of the array, and in square brackets you have the number, the index of the array. So for this array, what is the range of the indexes you can use? What's the range of the indexes you can use to access this if the array is of size 5? So the indexes will be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can use from index 0 to 4 here, right? Any questions so far? Anything you wish me to continue? Let me know. Okay, let's move on if there is no question to an exercise. Let's try this exercise. The exercise is write code to find the maximum element of the array. How do we do that? Find the maximum element of the array. Let's say this is our array, right? And we need to find the maximum value in this array. How would you do that? Any idea? Alright, no worries. Let's try and do this together. How will we do that? Here. So, we said we are using the same array from the previous slide, right? So, let's use the same array and see. That previous slide array, remember, said double values and in square bracket it had 5 and initial values were 32, 54, 67.5, 29 and 34.5. Let's see how could we find the maximum of all. So for this we need a for loop. A for loop. So how does a for loop go? You have int I is equal to 0, right? That's initialization. And then I is less than the number, the size, right? What was the size? 5. Remember? That array had size 5. So it needs to be from 0 to 4. So we write I is from 0 and less than 5. Right? And then we'll do I plus plus. And something interesting will go here. Let's try. Since we need to find max, we can initialize, let's say double. Since our array is of type double, so we'll have double max is equal to, what was the name of the array? Values, right? Values, let's say index 0 was initially max. We initialize it to max. But then, if values, was it value or values? I don't remember. Okay, it was values, right? Values at index 0, let's say at index 1, right, is greater than values at index 0, what would we do? Sorry. We'll say max will now be value 1. Does this kind of make sense? But we haven't done it correctly yet because this is a loop and we have just compared 1 and 0, right? So we need to compare the I here. So what do we write? To do that, let's assume that 0 is already there. So we'll start with 1 and we'll do I minus 1 here. That makes more sense, right? And then here we'll have I. So this is how you find the maximum element of the array. What have we done? We have created a for loop to iterate through the array, right? Since the array size was 5, we iterate from 1 to 5, y1 to 5. Here we're doing I minus 1. So it is accessing index 0 as well. We are comparing index 0 as well, right? That's why I just put 1. If I had a 0 here, how could I compare a value negative 1? We cannot have I have a negative index, right? And then I have a if condition. If value at index I, let's say initially it will be 1, right? Value 1 is greater than value 0, then our max would become 1. Otherwise it will still be 0. It's better idea to have this part, the declaration of max is equal to values equal 0 and value 0, to be outside of the for loop, right? It's better to have this outside of the for loop. Why? Because in each iteration it would again make values at index 0 be equal to max, right? We don't want that. So we have this outside the for loop. Now it makes sense. And we forgot to do, we could also have an else part here if we want to. Else, what would happen? Else max will be equal to values, what is it? I minus 1? Something like that. But I think only this much would work. Only this much will work. Don't need an else part. Would you like me to run this with the, would you like me to work through that with the code on the previous slide? With the array in the previous slide? I'll just quickly write it down if you wish to. Right, so in the previous slide we had this array. Where is it? Array of double called values of size 5, and it had, what did it have? It had 32, it had 54, it had 67.5, and then 29 and 34.5, right? So let's see. Initially we're saying that double max is equal to value 0. So apparently max is 32 in this line, right? Next, for int I is equal to 1, I is less than 5. Very true, 1 is less than 5. So if values are at 1, that is 54, is greater than 32, is it true? This is 54, this will be 32. Index 1 minus, 1 minus 1 will be 0. At index 0 we have 32. So max is equal to 54, right? Now we go back and iterate again. Apparently max is 54, right? So now I becomes 2. 2 is less than 5, right? True. So we go, if value at 2, which is 67.5, is greater than 54, true, right? So now max becomes 67.5. Let's go back. I plus plus, I becomes 3. 3 is less than 5. True. So if value at index 3 has 29, is greater than value at index 3 minus 1, which is true. Index 2 has 67.5. So this is false. So we don't update max and then go back, right? Go back, I plus plus, now I becomes 4, right? 4. So value at index 4 is 34.5 is greater than value at index. Okay, so there is an error in this code, right? This becomes true and our max will be, oh no, sorry, this is not true. So again, I'll start 4 int I is equal to 4, right? For now it's 4. If at index I, which is 4, is greater than I minus 129, max will become 34. Yeah, that's wrong. Something is wrong. Can somebody figure out what is wrong with this code? There is something wrong, right? To find the maximum. How will we find the maximum? We have written something wrong here. This is interesting. And once again, if you guys have just joined, we are talking about arrays. We're trying to solve this exercise of writing a code to find the maximum element of the array. And if you haven't given your student IDs, please do so. Let's get back to this. What is wrong here? What if over here we have two ifs? This would work. If we have another if here and we write if current max is less than values at index I, right? This condition instead, then max is equal to values I, then it would work. What do you think? So that means that our if condition was wrong here because it doesn't make sense and it doesn't work. We've just worked through it and figured out that nah, it doesn't give us the max. This will give us the max. If max is less than the value at index I, then the max will be equal to value at index 1 because it's greater than max. So you update max. Does that make sense? Is there any questions? Anything you'd like me to repeat or explain? It's a comparison sign, right? This means that if values at index I is greater than max, your max needs to be updated to values. If there is no questions, then we move on to the next exercise. Yeah? Okay, I'll just move on to the next exercise. Let's see what's next. Write code to find the minimum elements. That's kind of opposite to what we have just done, right? We have just done the maximum one. Let's try minimum. This time we'll make an array. Let's say int, this time array of integers, right? Let's say the name of the array is num, and it's of size 4, and let's initialize it to 3, 6, 2, and 5, right? So we have done array initialization. Let's write a code here to find the minimum. So to find the minimum, we need to iterate through the array. To iterate through the array, we need a for loop. Once again, for int I is equal to 0, right? I is less than, what will go there? Is less than 4, 5, or will it be less than equal to? What should it be? 4. Penisoni says 4, right? It should be 4. But should it be less than equal to? Just less than, correct. Thank you. And then we have I plus plus. And what will we write here? Let's initialize. I'll use the same concept, mean. So since we have array of integers, our minimum number will be integer, right? So I'll just write int mean and initialize it to num at index 0. What does this mean? We are initializing the variable minimum to be 3, right? Because at index 0 of num, it's 3. You guys understand the indexes, right? This is index 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now we have the if thing. If, what should be the condition? If num I is less than mean, right? Then mean is equal to num I. Here you go. Once again, since we have already initialized the first one to 0, we probably don't need to compare it, right? So we can start with 1, but it doesn't matter. We can start with 1. So let's iterate through this and see if it works. We hope that this works, right? So int num 4 is equal to 3, 6, 2, 5. What should be our answer anyway? What's the minimum here? 2, right? 2. So int mean is equal to initially 3. And then for int I is equal to 1. 1 is less than 4, true. So we go to this if num 1. What is at num 1? Because our I is 1, right? So what is at num 1? 6, correct. So 6 is less than, what was our mean? 3, right? Initially, we have given the value 3 to mean. Mean is equal to the first index 0, which is 3. So 6 is less than 3, false, right? So we don't do this. Still our mean is 3. Let's go back to the for loop, and now our index will be I plus plus, which is 2. I is less than 4, 2 is less than 4, true. So if num I, which is 2, so at index 2 we have 2, right? Num I, index 2 is 2, is less than mean. Mean is 3. Is 2 less than 3? Is 2 less than 3? Yes. So we go here and update our variable mean. Now our variable mean will be equal to num index 2, which is 2. So our minimum becomes 2. Let's go back to our for loop. Now I plus plus. Now I becomes 3. And is 3 less than 4? Yes. If num at index 3, which is num at index 3 is 5, right, is less than our current mean. Our current mean was calculated to be 2, right, which is false. 5 is not less than 2. So we don't do this and we go back to the for loop. I plus plus I becomes 5. Is 5 less than 4? No, right? So our mean will be equal to 2. So this works fine, right? So what was different in the previous question where we had to find maximum was just that you put, instead of putting a less than sign, you just put a greater than sign. That's it. That will be the difference. Over here, the if condition will be different, nothing else. So any question? No, then we move on to the, I think the next question is the last one. Any questions before we move on? If no, then let's move on. Write code to add all elements in an array. It's an addition question. How will you add all elements in an array? Interesting, right? Once again, same concept will be used. Let's say we have this time int. What do you want? Array of int, array of double, doesn't matter, right? So we'll just have array of double. Double, name it, let's say R, right? That's an array. And we have, for simplicity, let's make only 3 elements. The 3 elements, and the elements will be in the double, let's say 2.0, 4.0, and 1.1, right? We have initialized the array. Now what we have to do is add. So to store the numbers that will be added, we need to have a variable, right? So let's call a variable of type double, because if you add double, you get double. So add, right? And let's initialize it again to some numbers, right? Let's initialize it to 0 this time. But you can also initialize it to the first element of the array, which is 0. It's up to you how you want, right? You can also initialize to 0. Now we have for loop again. Int I is equal to 0. I is less than, this time what should go there? 3, right? I should be less than 3, and I plus plus. What happens next? We add. So now add will be equal to add first R at index I, like this. And that's it. Do you want me to iterate through this and figure out whether it works? Yeah? Yes? No? Okay, let's iterate anyway, since we have time, right? So, double array, I will scroll a little bit. Okay, double array 3, you understand that part, right? It's just initialization. So, initially, I'll make another table here. Alright? initially the value of add was equal to 0. So when we come in for loop, our I is 0, right? Our I becomes 0, and then we say add. So is 0 less than 3? True, right? So we come here. Add will be equal to add. What was add? 0, right? 0 plus array at index 0, which is 0. What's the value for this? 0? 2.0, right? So we put 2.0, which will be equal to 2.0, right? Now we go back to the for loop. We do I plus plus, so which will make I equal to 1 now, right? So let's compare. Is 1 less than 3? True, right? 1 is less than 3. So we go back and go inside the for loop and do whatever is required. So what is inside for loop? Add is equal to add plus I. So what's our add? Add is equal to 2.0. Remember, we've just calculated it. And what array at index I? Our index I is 1. What array at index 1? Alright, so it becomes 4.0. And then our value is now 6.0, right? Now let's go back to the for loop and do I plus plus. Now our I becomes 2, right? Right, 2. Now we add, once we compare, is 2 less than 3? True, right? Then we go inside the for loop and then do again add is equal to add plus I. So our add, the value of our current add is 6.0, right? 0.0. And then our I is 2. So what's at array index 2? 1.1. Right. So 1.1 goes here. And our value becomes 7.1. Do I plus plus once again. I becomes 3. Is 3 less than 3? False. So we don't do anything. Right? So our final value for add is 7.1. What can we do after that? After the for loop is just after the for loop here, we could just have what is it called? Cout statement. Cout add like that. And then it will print 7.1. So we have time, so you guys can ask me questions now. Any questions? And if you haven't given me your IDs, in case, then please do so. So question time. Before end of session. Anybody has any questions regarding array or regarding anything we have covered previously? You can still ask. Or maybe suggest something that you would like me to discuss in the next mentoring. Let's wait for 5 minutes. I'll just wait.